Hello.
Hello, awesome, and I can hear you too, which is great. So now that we're tech checked, I'm going to hand it over to you, John, to deliver the presentation. But why don't you open with where you're joining us from today and what you're going to be talking about?
Hello. My name is John Pagonis. I'm joining from Maidenhead, UK. It's 6 o'clock here today, and 13 degrees, I think, or something like that. So before we start, one of the biggest problems I've been thinking of having today is that of feedback. So if you can, could you just put plus or minuses or smileys in the chat as I deliver this talk, so I can actually get the feel of the room, because there's no room. I'm talking to my computer and it's weird. Okay, so if you can, thank you very much. Hello world again. So my name is John Pagonis. I am a consultant for Zansi Labs. And what we do at Zansi Labs is we help people produce useful software. And I'm going to delve into that later. Effectively, I'm a consultant, so I specialize in telling you what you already know. Okay, so these are my Twitter handles, Zansi Labs and John Pagonis. That's a personal one. And you can basically shoot there and we can have a dialogue on LinkedIn or here. Okay. So today I will discuss basic and fundamental stuff. And by that, I mean really basic stuff. I'm a bit pedantic, so I'll give you my definition of UX, which is actually Donald Norman's definition of UX, so that we're on the same basis. So user experience basically encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, the service, and its product. Yeah, that's what we call user experiences at Zansi Labs, and that's what Nielsen Norman group actually stated is. Some people call this UX. I'm just saying that this is UX for me. Yeah. Okay. Now, well, today I'm going to be really environmental. I want to talk about waste because I've been around in the software production industry for about 21 years. And as a young engineer who became a UXer, who was a CTO and failed in many projects and has a lot of pain and, if you like, learnings from that experience, I have observed that we tend to spec and build software that is never or rarely used. And I know this may have never happened to you, but it has happened to me. It has happened to organizations I've worked for, teams, friends, a lot of people. So your mileage may vary, but this is my observation in the past 21 years in this business. And as you can see, I'm getting older. So I've been thinking, do we have time and money to waste building what is not needed? I hope your answer is no. Because most software is never or rarely used, depending on which study you choose to believe. Since the 70s, actually, software engineering studies, they quote something between 60 and 80% of software not being used at the end. And I think that's scary. Even if it's just 50% of software that's never or rarely used, imagine what happens if that 50% of software you build is delivered in front of the other 50, which is used. If you're a big corporation, you do not only waste money, you waste time to market, and that could actually put you in trouble. If you're a startup, it could possibly kill your startup. I've been there, I've done that, and I don't have the t-shirt to prove it because I ran out of money. Okay. Now, as a consequence of executing code which is not needed, we are depleting the plant of resources. We're wasting our time, and we're killing basically the rainforest. So no, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be executing waste. But why is that we build software that is never or rarely used? Think about it. Why do we do that? Nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to produce waste. Nobody. My observation again is that we do just in case speculative opinion-based backlogs. We think, okay, we're going to have a release next month or in 6 months. We better throw in everything, including the kitchen sink, So just in case we need in the future, because the milestone closes and we have to be through the toll gate. Or because wake up in the morning, say, I'm the product manager, I know what we need to paint it blue. Stuff like that, yeah? Speculation, and just in case, a requirement solicitation, shall I say, is the bane of the biggest problem of waste in software engineering. Whose opinion is inputs to the backlog doesn't matter. It could be the UXers, it could be the POs, it could be the developers, the boss, it doesn't really matter. It's an opinion, it's not a fact. And opinions can kill your company. So what should we do with product backlogs? How should we craft them? Now, this information is taken from experience, working both in enterprise and startups. I haven't done much work in mid-sized companies, so your mileage may vary. This is my experience. Okay, how should we craft product backlogs? Should we listen to stakeholders? Yeah, should we or should we not? Who dares to answer in the chat room? Well, the answer is maybe and probably. The problem being that the only person not at a stakeholder meeting is the user, as Nielsen has correctly pointed out decades ago. The user is never found in the stakeholder meeting. But where are the stakeholders that we should listen? Where can we find them, and what do they need? It always plays in my mind every time this happens, yeah? And the answer is they exist in three main domains: the business domain, the user domain, and the system domain. So what happens is that when we discover user needs, and we also discover business needs and we match them, then we have the so-called product market fit. A beautiful situation, typically for a startup, or maybe for a bigger company that's going through some refactoring, where we know we can actually win the market. Product market fit. At which point we need to actually think about technology as well. That's a good situation to be in. The other situation is when we actually look at the user needs, we look at the system needs, and we geek out. And then we have a hobby, because someone else will pay the rent. We shouldn't forget the business, yeah, because that's how you make the money. A third situation is when we actually discover the business needs, when we discover the system needs, and then we end in the so-called BRD hell, where we have business requirements documents flying over our heads, and we have to actually make it to the next sprint. That's a bad situation, because if you forget the user, eventually you run out of money. That's the ugly situation where a lot of waste is created. And if you look at the Toyota production system, 8 sources of waste, you will find a lot of that in there. Okay, so what happens then? We have a sprint, we need to deliver, we have a velocity. What's going to happen? We need to deliver, output. Well, what do you do then? If we go back to Scrum, which was created before Agile, actually, whatever Agile is, we will see that its creators don't believe in velocity. Actually, velocity is not even the Scrum guide. Anyway, so we should deliver value. And actually, the latest book that describes Scrum, and therefore Agile in my view, argues a lot against focusing on velocity. By the way, it's full of Scrum patterns. It's a beautiful book. I was a technical reviewer for that book. You should buy it. It helps product managers. Trust me. Okay, that was a shameless plug, obviously. There is nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that shouldn't be done at all. We shouldn't be delivering stuff. We shouldn't be delivering waste efficiently. No, this is waste. We're killing the Amazon when we do that. We should be focusing on value. Okay, because the biggest question is not how fast, how much, or when we're going to deliver something. The biggest question is if we should be delivering something. The most important question is if. The how, the when, the how much, that's for later, yeah? If is the most important question. But what about all the requirements we have? We have a backlog of stuff and we have to actually go for that. What do we do with the requirements? Which, by the way, requirements means shut up and do it, yeah? we got to tackle them, right? And how do we do that? Well, first we have to remind ourselves that most problems in software engineering, in software systems, can be traced back to requirements. Most of the times due to ambiguity. Most of the times because they're conflicting. Other times because they're too big and a lot of bugs basically crept in because of complexity. Most problems in software systems can be traced back to requirements. That's a very important thing to remember every time we put something in our backlog. If is a very important question. So what we admit that we don't know if something needs to be delivered, and we turn it and we name it an assumption. In my experience, all product requirements are assumptions until they get validated. All of them. We can transform the product backlog into a backlog of assumptions. And when that happens, magic ensues because everyone is freed up to actually say, something, maybe we need to test this, or yeah, I'm not exactly sure, let's discuss, let's research. Same information, same stuff, you name it assumption, and then people open up. Try this at home or at work. Yeah, it might work. Each product backlog item must have value and risk assigned to it when we go through this exercise. And at that point, we shouldn't be thinking about cost. There's no point costing something that you may never design or build. Never. So leave cost out of it. Take all your product backlog items, rename them, call them assumption, and then assign value and risk to each of them. Okay? Risk, John? Yes, risk. What is risk? Yeah, it's a big question. If you look at Wikipedia, you're going to find a gazillion answers. So what is risk? I use that definition of risk. Risk is not knowing what you're doing or why you're doing it. Thank you, Warren. Okay. Risk is a measure of how dead our product or company is if an assumption that we hold dear turns out to be false after we execute it. For product backlogs, I use this definition, and thanks to Laura Klein for actually teaching me all this stuff through her books and videos. And if you haven't read Laura Klein books or you haven't watched her videos, please do it. She does a better job than me at explaining this. So risk is a measure of how dead our product or company is. If we actually go and implement or base our company on assumptions. Okay? But how do you start? Well, first we must order those product backlog items by risk and value. So what I do is I basically go to my PO every time I work with product owners. Last time it was Andy, and I asked him, look, Andy, we have 30 of these assumptions. Can you please reorder them? By the time he had reached number 10, we knew we had too much on our plate, and we had to go out there and conduct research. You don't have to actually go through all of them. The moment you find the top 10, you know how big the trouble is, And that's one of the services that UXers provide to product managers, product owners, to the organization, is that they bring evidence, they bring this information, and they let product managers decide how to proceed. Our job is to bring evidence. Yeah. So last time we did this, we got 10 of them. Okay, we had to move on, and then obviously we had to assign them then by value, and we had to do work. We had to do our homework to find the riskiest assumptions and actually reorder each assumption after the next. Yeah. Typically, you give the input, the PO does the sorting. Value for each of those PBIs is a function of business, user, and system needs. Not just of user needs, not just of business needs. It's a function of all of the three. One PBI may have value only in one domain. That's okay. That's where you get the PO to actually decide, which value is above everything else. Typically, a good PO will actually put the user and the business above the system. But sometimes, especially if you have technical debt, well, system needs may actually bubble up. So that's homework time. Okay. Again, business, user, system. All these three domains feed back into the value of the backlog. That's a lot. So where do you go to find value? You have all these three domains. Where do you go first? All right. 20 years ago, a very smarter than me, and much richer person than me came up with the following algorithm. Watch carefully. Start with the customer and work backwards. Jeff said it, Jeff did it. He probably knows something. That's the easiest way to find out what you need to do next. It's the easiest way to do user journey mapping. It's the easiest way to prioritize. It's always the easiest way, because if the customer is happy, you make money. If the customer is unhappy and their needs are not catered for, you're in trouble. So start with the customer and work backwards. It's always the simplest way to go about it. Anyway, in my experience, and Jeff's experience probably. So how do we know what the user needs? Nope, not that way. We start first by admitting that we don't know who the user is. Even if we do, just say we don't know the user. We need to do something about it. And that about it, what we do about it, is basically user research. Because user research is a reality check. First of all, get out of the building and you meet people or you observe people and you find about the information you need in order to build up, let's say, personas, which have a lot of behavioral as well as demographic attributes. Yeah. User research is a reality check, and that's what we do. However, there's a lot of information inside the building as well, in the organization. So one of the things where I do first is I go to my colleagues. Actually, last time we did this at Nationwide at Team W, we had this, I cannot tell you exactly what we're doing. We had this project, brand new thing. And what we did with a product owner, we went to the customer-facing staff. We interviewed them. We said, okay, guys, you know the user. You talk to them every day over the phone. Let's talk. So we interviewed internal staff. Okay, so the internal staff basically give you a skeleton of who the user is. That's great information. It's triangulation. You will go to the user as well, but they have gold. And nobody listens to them, so you can go there and talk to them, and they will give you all information. Also, here's a pro tip. Call agents and consultants over the phone or support staff are used to be observed. They are used to being observed by the supervisors for regulatory reasons, and they don't care. So if you go there for contextual inquiry or you just listen in, they don't care. They will not change the behavior or the attitude. And that allows you to extract a lot of information from them and the users. And then, of course, you can talk to other support staff. You can look at support fora. You can look at internal analytics, especially if you have a very good PO. He will pick up all the information from the company. You can synthesize data. You can actually look at numbers and figures. You can dice and slice it. And that gives you another part of the persona that you're looking to build. Yeah. User-reported problems is also a treasure trove. You can do clustering analysis and data mining and get that information. That allows you to build a skeleton, and then you go out to find the flesh of the skeleton by doing primary research with the users. At least that's what we do, and that's what we did last time with Nationwide, a really nice organization to work for. Okay. So how do you know what the business needs? Yeah, you should not forget the business. Okay, so how do you know that? Well, you go to the stakeholders. No, they have desires, they have opinions, they have leverage. Maybe they're swimming in ambiguity, but they have business knowledge. And basically, when you talk to them from all of the departments, not just above you, but around you, you need to empathize and discover and recognize the true business goals and separate them from the pure speculation, because they know the legit goals of the business, and they also speculate because they're humans like us. Okay, humans like us researchers. All right. Okay, so you need to separate those two things and run with the information. Yeah, it's not only the users or only the system. You need to look inside the business as well. Respectfully challenging with why in order to understand never harmed any relation. So I'd advise you do it. Okay. So what about system needs? All right. That's a talk for another day. But typically, I start with technical debt. And technical debt, like real debt, also compounds exponentially. So if you have bugs in the system, you need to cater for them immediately. You shouldn't actually hide them for new stuff. The same thing happens with UX debt. If you have usability issues, you need to immediately cater for them. Okay. Now, a very important tool for maintaining evidence-based backlogs is, you guessed it, KPIs. You need to have some. And actually, those KPIs need to measure outcomes, not output. And actually, Jeff Patton explains this perfectly on his videos and in his seminars. So I'd advise you to actually go out and look Jeff's material. Outcomes-focused KPIs need to connect back to the PBIs. Yeah. So if you measure something, it has to connect back to something that you produced, and you should know how it moves if you produce a better or worse increment, if you like. Yeah. Always look for outcomes-based KPIs, not output-based KPIs like, I don't know, velocity. Okay. So here's a very useful KPI that we have introduced with the UX department at Nationwide for internal and external systems soon. Usefulness, which is a function of utility and usability. Usefulness. Jakob Nielsen says that usability is equally important as utility. Maybe maybe I think utility is a bit more important, but I don't want to argue with Jakob, not yet. Okay, so let's say you measure usefulness. On one axis you have utility, on the other axis you have usability. And there's a threshold above which something's easy to use and something is hard to use at various degrees. But there's a threshold, and your organization needs to figure out what the threshold should be for your product. Okay. There's also a threshold that separates what is needed at various degrees to what is not needed, and you shouldn't be doing it. And that's again a threshold that each organization has to figure out. When you produce stuff in the bottom left territory of not needed and hard to use, you're producing waste, you're killing the rainforest, the Amazon. Don't do that. Yeah? And I've done it, I know that. So don't do that. Don't be in the bottom left quadrant. When you actually produce stuff which are not needed but easy to use, well, it's still waste and you're probably an artist. I don't know, maybe you don't want to be doing this in a corporate environment. Now, when you move above the utility threshold on the top left quadrant, you basically are in the quadrant of of functionally adequate software, which is good. It's a good place to start, especially if you're doing new product development. That's fine. Start from there. You shouldn't forget about UX design and usability and other attributes of UX, but it's a good start. Nobody's going to blame you if you're building a new system and you start from the top left. And ultimately, our target should be at the top right, where we produce useful software, which is both needed and easy to use. Because if stuff are not easy to use and they have a lot of annoyances, utility drops, as one very smart PO told me one day. Okay, so top left is about doing the right thing, and top right is about doing the right thing right. Yeah? Doing the right thing and doing it right for the user. Okay? Now, there's one subtlety there that people ask me about all the time. John, how do we move up the utility axis? How do we do that? And the question is, sorry, that's a question. And the answer is, well, you have to do generative research. And by the way, a friend of mine asked me to tell you that prototyping is part of generative research. He wrote a book on Scrum recently. So generative research is how we move up the utility ladder, because we cannot just usability test our way to usefulness. We cannot just do evaluative research and increase our utility. Yes, we can a bit, but not totally. You cannot just go all the way to utility with usability testing only. You have to do generative research. That's a very important point, because people try to improve and find what the users need by just doing usability testing. It doesn't work. Yeah, we have to do generative research. So we have to do product discovery. Okay. One parting thought. Evidence from continuous product discovery gets us to useful. Evidence from continuous product discovery, not just design sprints that finish after a week. We need to be doing continuous product discovery. So I will not summarize now, because you can always rewind the video. I just want to tell you one last thing. I think about it every morning when I go to work. Would I bet my money on this product backlog? If the answer is no, then I have to do some homework with my team. Thank you very, very much, and I hope you enjoy these books if you haven't already. We can now have a few questions if you like. Or not. I can always check the QA tab, and I see 3 questions. The first one is from Dimitris, the other one from Emma, and the third one from Julia. Dimitris asks, what are the steps you look in order to start working like this within a company that didn't have such mentality? Nice one. Which were the biggest challenges you faced and how did you overcome them? Okay, I'll start with the challenges. The biggest challenge is challenging the status quo. People need to feel safe. So the first thing you have to do is you have to make the product management organization and their bosses feel safe with you conducting UX research and transforming the backlog. If they don't feel safe, they will not allow you to do this. That's very important. One technique I use is I conduct interviews with them, and after I finish the interviews, I tell them, look, this is exactly what I'm going to do with the users. Another technique I use is basically show them video of users actually struggling with the software if there's an existing software. Safety is the first thing. And as I tell everyone, the moment you introduce UX research into the software production process, what you have in your hands is a transformation project, and you have to work through that transformation project. You cannot just go and do it unless the organization is really, really mature. If the organization is not really mature, you also have to appeal to their loss aversion. Tell them what's going to happen if they don't do it, or show them examples. Okay, next question.
Oh yeah, John, no, you're on a roll. I'm sorry, my camera and mic wasn't working. Feel free to roll through the questions.
Okay, second question. I thought there were 4. Now, where are the questions going? Miles, are you?
I removed the top one, but the third one was, I don't know where that one went. I'll go to,
Okay.
I'll check out where that
But
is. But you answered that one at the top first.
Do you have examples of how you map backlog items initiative against value and risk? Yes, example. Okay. So value is business specific. So typically it has to do with money, with customers, losing customers, that is typically, and with system problems. For the system problems, we typically go to the people that know better. As far as money and customers go, I never write down my opinion. I ask the product manager, product owner to do that. Typically, we have pounds assigned next to them, and typically it's in the order of millions. But you don't want to actually answer that question. You want to leave it to the product manager to do it. It's very simple though. It's a Google it's a Google document or a spreadsheet, and you basically have the requirement that became assumption, the risk next to it, and the value, typically in monetary terms. And the risk is typically a comment from the PO or a number from 1 to 3, where 3 means we're dead, 2 means I've lost my job, and 1 means okay, probably we're okay. Yeah, and we start with the 3s and then with the 2s, and typically we never go to the 1s because you discover more stuff to do. But you have to keep it simple so that the exercise can complete very quickly. Product managers, POs, people in business immediately can tell you where the problem is. You don't have to spend days on that. Yeah. Okay. Third question. Does software become obsolete at such a rapid speed too? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Software lives forever. And as COBOL, for example, and one of my specializations in our corporations is to work with black and white screens and go into transformation projects where they have all the AS400 systems or whatever have you, and they want to basically rewrite them in React or some other fancy technology. And I help them figure out that, the old system is probably a good system. Let's baseline it first before you do something, because you might be upsetting a lot of users, especially colleagues and in B2B situations or in enterprise settings. Another thing, there's an axiom by Jerry Weinberg that says you should not rewrite a system if it's cheaper not to. So because software lives forever, you have to basically, talking about technical debt, look how much is that debt costing you and how much is going to cost you to rewrite, and compare them. And if rewrite is more expensive, then maybe you don't. I mean, again, it's from painful experience, and I've made all of the mistakes that I asked you not to make by giving this presentation. Do you have another question?
No, so the other question, John, was actually they took it down because it was actually related to the Google panel, and so that is all the questions we have for you now. But we will get you in for the Zoom call later this evening. So if anyone has any further questions for John's awesome presentation, please do hold on to them and drop them in, bring them live with your own webcam later on when we jump in for that session. But John, thank you so much for delivering that. It was a really, really great talk. Really enjoyed it.
And participating through the comment box.
We dance.